Apple TV's Cape Fear is a psychological thriller created by Nick Kantoska, starring Javier Bardem, Amy Adams and Patrick Wilson in lead roles. Based on the book The Executioners by John D. MacDonald, as well as the film adaptations, this interpretation of the story has received generally favourable reviews from critics, with the series holding an approval rating of 75% on Rotten Tomatoes. However, despite the impressive cast and solid reviews, the series has garnered surprisingly little buzz since it first aired. So in today's video, I'm going to be discussing Cape Fear and diving into why the series was able to quietly come and go. And just for a heads up, this discussion will contain major spoilers. So, Cape Fear centres on Max Cady, a violent ex-convict who's released from prison after serving 17 years for the murder of his pregnant wife, after evidence is found that exonerates him. Anna, his former defence lawyer, convinced him to take the plea deal offered by prosecutor Tom Bowden. However, after seeing his former defence lawyer marry the prosecutor, once Max is released, he makes it his mission to get revenge on the two of them, and begins worming his way into their everyday lives. And first of all, when discussing Cape Fear, you can't ignore the cast, as it's full to the brim with some of the most talented actors in Hollywood. Javier Bardem, who plays Max, and Amy Adams, who plays Anna, are both Academy Award winners, whilst you've also got the immensely talented Patrick Wilson as Tom Bowden, Juliette Lewis as Max's half-sister, and other high-profile actors in more minor roles, such as Ron Perlman and The Wire's Jamie Hector. But not only that, off-screen there's just as much talent involved, with Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg working as executive producers on the show. Who knows how much actual day-to-day involvement they had, but the show is very happy to highlight their involvement, with the names front and centre at the end of each episode. Now, as someone who has not watched either of the films or read the book, this was my first exposure to Cape Fear, so I went into it with essentially no knowledge of the story. And early on, I really appreciated how the layers of the narrative were gradually revealed. Your initial interpretation of what's going on is that Max is an intimidating and violent monster, whereas Anna is nothing more than his innocent former defence lawyer, who's now dedicated a life to supporting wrongly convicted inmates. But as the story unravels, you soon realise that things aren't quite as straightforward as they initially seemed. The fact that Anna went on to marry Tom, who was prosecuting Max, raises a lot of questions regarding that plea deal. Once released, Max goes on a charm offensive, with him portraying himself as nothing more than an innocent victim of a miscarriage of justice, despite him being known as a violent man prior to his arrest. Early on, it's really difficult to judge his character. As soon as he was released from prison, things start to go wrong for the Bowden family. You do get a sense that he's behind everything, but he says all the right things and has an answer for everything. He's just so charming and charismatic, largely due to an impressive performance from Javier Bardem, which is able to leave you with just a glimmer of doubt that maybe we've got him all wrong. Max is a master manipulator and incredibly cunning, so he's able to get people on his side effortlessly. Even the Bowden's kids end up being entranced by him. As the season goes on, the show goes into how Max became the man he is today. His dad was abusive, and he received little support growing up. In fact, his family situation was completely fucked up, with him having an incestuous relationship with his half-sister. We're also shown how the prison system breaks him down, with Max embracing the violence and becoming part of a cult. Whilst he may not have been a murderer when he began his sentence, by the end, killing becomes almost second nature to him. Max is by far the series' biggest selling point, as he's such a captivating character, driven by a magnetic performance from Javier Bardem, who alone makes Cape Fear worth watching. In fact, Javier Bardem is so good in the role, he almost makes the character likeable. Honestly, it felt like he wasn't just manipulating the people around him, but the audience as well. Javier Bardem is clearly having a great time with this series, and giving it his all, so the notion of him and Amy Adams playing off each other sounds incredibly promising, right? Well, the reality wasn't quite so impressive, as despite Amy Adams being a talented actress capable of such wonderful performances, I actually found her to be quite frustrating in this role. She seemed almost checked out in a lot of her scenes, and I never fully bought the emotion presented. Because of this, I found it difficult to be on the character's side, Obviously, Anna is a complex character who's made plenty of mistakes, but I never felt a pull to root for her, as the character seemed so uninspired and bland. Like, objectively, what she's going through is terrible, so you should be on her side by default, but I never truly cared about her, which is largely due to her performance, which I must say, felt phoned in. Patrick Wilson, by comparison, was levels ahead. However, rooting for her and the family was never going to be easy, as the kids are written to be little more than fodder for Max to manipulate. They've got little to no agency all season and constantly make mistakes. Obviously, they are young, so you don't expect them to be perfect, but they mess up constantly and they're not particularly likeable, so I didn't find myself rooting for them. The most infuriating moment for me was when the daughter Natalie decides to go on a drive with Max, despite him quite clearly being a highly dangerous individual, with her parents warning her to stay away from him. As soon as she got in that car, I'm sorry, but I had to wipe my hands of it. I just thought, you actually deserve to die. I do get that he's charming, but come on. Anna admits that she stopped drinking after she gave birth to Natalie, and yep, that checks out, as she does seem to be suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome. Although, it wasn't just the Bowden family that he's able to manipulate, as his own daughter Nevaeh is nothing more than a tool to be used by Max, with her willing to do whatever it takes to please him. He's got her wrapped around his little finger, and she blindly trusts whatever he says. As the season progresses, the Bowdens become increasingly desperate. They want Max out of their lives, and this nightmare to be over, so they concoct a plan to frame him for drugs possession, using Anna's estranged father to plant the evidence. However, this plan backfires spectacularly, with Max able to coerce Anna's dad into publicly confessing to framing him. This leads to the arrest of Tom for the murder of their friend Ray, who Max actually killed, with it suggested that Tom killed Ray after finding out about their scheme. This in turn leads to Natalie confronting Max, who now realises that she's been used by him to destroy her own family, and he goads her into shooting him, directing exactly where she should shoot him. But predictably, the spot that she shoots him isn't in an area that can kill him, so he survives, with Natalie arrested for attempted murder. So at this point, Anna's life has truly fallen apart. Her husband is in prison for murder, her daughter is in prison for attempted murder, and her son is locked up in a psychiatric ward after stabbing Tom. And it's all been expertly manufactured by Max. But why go to so much effort to ruin someone's life? Why not just try to move on with your life and enjoy the multi-million-dollar payout that he received as compensation? Well, as was shown throughout the season, Max frequently has visions of his dead wife and son. He's still not over the trauma of losing them, and feels like he was betrayed by Anna during the lowest moment of his life, with it also suggested that they slept together early on when she began representing him. So it's the mix of love for his wife and unborn child, as well as his hatred for Anna, that causes him to do this. He wants Anna to feel the same pain that he felt, and he's willing to do whatever it takes for that to happen. Towards the end of the season, we finally find out the truth about what happened to Max's wife, with it revealed that Crystal, Max's half-sister, murdered his wife in a fit of jealous rage. What had initially started as abuse leads to an incestuous relationship between the siblings, but Max discarded her and moved on with his wife, which Crystal couldn't handle. And then we get to the season finale, which was eventful to say the least. Finally, Max is ready to get revenge on those he believes have wronged him, starting with his own family. He confronts them at the boat and shoots his sister Crystal, as well as Luke, who Anna believes is their incestuous child. He attacks his dad and forces him into a dog cage, a throwback to how he was treated as a child. But Max wasn't done there, as he pours gasoline over the boat and sets it on fire, leaving them to burn to death. This is Max at his most vindictive, and whilst it's obviously terrible what he's doing, especially to the innocent child, I think we've secretly all been waiting for him to go full scorched earth. Named in memory of his wife and unborn child, Max publicly announces the opening of his new restaurant. However, after escaping from the boat earlier, Anna arrives and exposes Max by playing recordings that prove that he was manipulating his daughter to kill Natalie, and that he coerced his mistress into falsely confessing to his wife's murder. With such overwhelming evidence provided, this is enough for the police to arrest Max, but predictably, this doesn't last too long, and he escapes from custody, before heading straight to the Bowden family household. In a dramatic final showdown, Max holds the family at gunpoint, with him forcing them into a mock trial so that he can finally find out the truth about his initial conviction. Reluctantly, Anna confesses what happened. She'd heard a leak that the jury were conflicted about Max and that he could potentially walk. But because she was scared of him and thought that he could be Natalie's dad, she sought the plea deal. But we weren't done there. As after Max revealed that Crystal couldn't get pregnant due to an accident, Anna is able to deduce that Luke was not the incestuous child of the siblings. Instead, he's the child that Max believed that he'd lost when his wife was murdered. In a gruesome twist, it turns out that Crystal had cut the baby out of Max's wife and raised him as her own. And I must say, I found this to be such a despicable but brilliant twist. With him killing his own son earlier, Max is understandably distraught and distracted, with Natalie using this as a good moment to escape from her binds. As stupid as she's been this season, this episode did do a lot to redeem her, and showed that she's not always completely brain dead, as she was able to manipulate Max's daughter into confessing what he did for the recording, and she finally showed some sort of survival instincts to get free from her binds and help her parents get free too. This climactic fight sees the entire family working together to take down Max once and for all, and I can't lie, it was honestly quite good. It felt dramatic, you felt the stakes, and once he's finally taken down, it felt earned, so fair play. Whilst they could have easily let Max drown in the pool, Anna decides to show mercy and let him live the rest of his life in prison. So whilst uneven, the series ends in a fittingly dark way that I did find satisfying. Because of that, I can just about recommend it. So Cape Fear gets a thumbs up from me, as despite the issues, it's just about worth watching. Okay, but why did it generate so little buzz overall then? Well, for me, the biggest issue with Cape Fear is that it wasn't quite as good as everything around it suggested it would be. You've got the best in the business involved in the series, Scorsese and Spielberg as executive producers, an incredible cast, and it was produced by AppleTV, who are gradually becoming one of the best companies in the industry. This should have been proper prestige television, awards caliber stuff. So naturally, people went into it expecting a certain level of quality. So when it doesn't quite meet your expectations, people become disappointed, even though it is perfectly fine. It's good in fact. It's just not great. I mean, if you take a look at the show's series graph, it averages a low 7 for each episode, which I do think is fair. But we're currently in an era where there is so much content available. There are so many streaming services, and an almost limitless amount of quality series out there. So as an audience, we're spoilt for choice. Something being pretty good doesn't quite cut it anymore, and it certainly doesn't lead to tons of positive word of mouth. People only have so much free time, so expect greatness. And for a lot of people, if they don't get it, they'd rather binge Breaking Bad for the 5th time. So for me, I can completely understand why Cape Fear wasn't able to generate a ton of hype around it. So, what did you think of Cape Fear? And do you think it deserved more attention? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more. And I'll see you next time for another video. Goodbye.